Okay folks, what I want you to do now, okay, is I want you to cast your mind back to the very, very start of the whole process. And remember the time when I actually harped on about how very important it is to make sure that you install the very first board, the starter board, absolutely perfectly plumb, okay? Because obviously if this is perfectly plumb, then all the successive boards you install will also be plumb, and the joint lines will look plumb and they won't look completely skewed, okay? Now, what I'm going to do now is talk you through the process of how to achieve a perfectly plumb starter board, even if the wall which you're going to be working off isn't perfectly plumb, okay? So as you can see, what we've done here is we've set up a mock, we've rigged up a mock-up here to actually show you this process. Now this wall is obviously leaning way out of plumb, okay? So what that would mean is that if we were to just install this board dead tight to that wall, obviously all the other boards then would be way out of plumb, okay? So what we're going to do now is walk through the process of how to make sure that the very first board you install is plumb, okay? So the first thing you need to do is you need to actually hold the board in the exact position in which it's actually going to go and installed on the wall, okay? Then take a level and actually adjust the board whichever way you have to make it actually plumb, okay? So what I'm going to do here is just actually pull that board out now and pull it, okay? And now I have a plumb, so the leading edge is going to be plumb, even though we're going to put this board into suit the actual angle of this wall. The leading edge will remain plumb. That's the most critical point. So like I said, we take a measurement from this edge of the actual board here to this edge of the wall here, okay? This face of the wall. And it's always got to be that you record the actual widest gap between the wall and the actual board. So what we then done was we put a piece of timber to that dimension, and the next thing we're going to do is that's going to become our scribing block, as you will see. So the next thing we need to do is actually tack that in place so it doesn't move during the actual scribing process. So just to make sure again, we'll just double check that the leading edge here is actually plumb, and it is. Spot on. Then all we need to do, very similar to when we actually scribed in against the contoured surface, is to take the scribing block, hold it tight against the wall, then take our pencil, register that against the scribing block, and simply transfer the angle of the wall onto the actual closing board. And as you can see, it peters out to nothing up the top here, so zeroes out. And again, we'll just run that all the way down. And we've got a perfect scribe line there. Now all we have to do is take that board off and cut it in the exact same fashion we've done for every other single board, okay? Now I just want to point out one thing, again when it comes to scribing and cutting, okay? Always make sure that you achieve the back cut angle on this scribe, because remember that's what's going to facilitate a much more professional finish when the board cuts this wall here, okay? It'll be nice and tight, give you back cut. Okay folks, so that about sums it up now in terms of the installation process when you're running TNG sheeting on your walls. Okay, but what I want to do is, before we actually conclude and move on to the actual style and rail system, I want to just talk you through a couple of important factors when it comes to installing the actual skirting board and the actual chair rail or data rail and the actual right angle corner steps, okay? Now, the first thing to know is, okay, that you can't actually purchase a chair rail or data rail very much like the one I have here, okay? And the beauty of this one is that it actually incorporates this rebate, okay? And what that means is it facilitates a really, really easy positioning of the actual chair rail on the wall, because the actual lip sits down over the actual paneling and covers the raw edge. But it also gives you a nice solid point of fixing, okay? Nice solid point of bearing, okay? Now, don't worry about how you actually go and achieve minor cuts to actually turn the corner here, okay, on the chair rail and on the side of the skirt. But we are actually going to walk through that process step by step when we come to the style and rail system, okay? Now, another thing you've got to bear in mind is when you actually pick your actual skirting boards and your chair rail is this, okay? You've got to be very, very careful that you actually choose the actual corner bead, that when you install the corner bead, it's actually going to end up flush with the face of the actual chair rail, just like it is here, okay? You don't want to stand proud, okay? If you stand proud like this, it will be really undesirable aesthetically, okay? So a nice flush joint like that. And then, if you actually just come down here if you can, what you've also got to make sure is this, that the actual skirting board, the flat part portion on the top of the skirting board is actually wider than or bare minimum equal to the actual thickness of the slip. So again, you get a nice neat transition here between the actual corner slip and the skirting board. Okay, so that's really important. Now in terms of fixing the skirting board on, the actual chair rail or dado rail on, and the corner slips, again that is just achieved by the use of construction adhesive, PVA wood glue, brad nails or panel pins, just like everything else was, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to move along in the process and we're going to actually show you how to install a rail and style system and really jazz this up, okay? Now folks, what I'm going to actually do now is talk you through the actual component parts of this raised panelling system, okay? So it's very simple. The material we're using is MDF. The reason we're using this is it paints up beautifully, it's really easy to cut, and it actually will not expand and contract or distort anywhere near as much as, let's say, pine, oak, red deal, cypress, any other materials that you could be using, okay? Because it's a man-made board, far more stable, okay? Now, the component parts are as follows. You've got a 140mm bottom rail, which will be this piece here. And the reason we've made it 140mm is because the actual skirting board is 70mm. So we want to, when we apply the actual skirting board onto the bottom rail, we want to leave a 70mm exposure. So the exposure should be the same as, or maybe a little bit less, but it looks better if it's the same as the actual skirting board or the mold that's applied on top of it, okay? Likewise, with the top rail, again it's 140mm because we've actually used the same moulding as the actual chair rail here, and because that's 70mm, we want to leave 70mm exposure. So when the chair rail goes on top of the actual top rail, it will leave 70mm exposure. Okay? Other pieces that we're going to actually need in the system is a 70mm field style. That can be wider. I just like 70mm. I think it looks really well. I think it's all in proportion, and that's why I chose 70mm. So that, what I mean by field style is the actual styles that are actually applied to the wall mid-span on the wall, or along the actual broad expanse of the wall. To make up the corners, we're again going to be using styles, but we're going to be using two styles of different width, okay? Again, for the front face, we'll use a 70mm corner style, but on the return piece here, what we'll do is we'll actually use a 52mm corner style, so we'll deduct the thickness of the actual style material itself for this reason. When we apply this corner style onto the actual wall here, we're going to leave it overhang the edge of the wall by 18mm, and what we'll do then is we'll actually apply the 52mm return corner style on like so, and we'll screw through this face or nail through this face to actually make this assembly a whole complete unit. But when we do that, because we deducted 50 to 18mm off this dimension here, when we add back on the 18mm, we'll get 70mm. So then we'll have symmetry of the actual dimensions across here and here. So it'll be 70mm on the front and 70mm on the actual return piece. Now again, these are going to be fitted in very much the same way as the panelling. We're going to use either nails, screws where they will be concealed by successive layers of moulding, and indeed construction adhesive. And what we're going to do now is we're going to move back to the actual rig, and we're going to show you how to install all these component parts. Now folks, before we actually go through the process of marking the rails and styles to length, cutting them and applying them on the wall, I want to point out one really important feature to you, okay? And that is this. When you're actually installing the rails and styles onto the actual wall, okay, it's very important that you make sure the actual rail runs continuous, okay, and that the style runs continuous and the rail actually abuts into the style. And what I mean is that it actually should look like this as opposed to this, because you don't want to see that joint there like so, okay, you do not want to see that joint line. So if we do it like so, it's far more professional finish. So always think of it like this. Look at, next time you get a chance, look at a door in your home, okay? The actual styles always run continuous from the top to the bottom of the door, and the rails put into the style, okay? Now what I want to do is actually point out and walk you through the very simple process for actually marking the actual styles to length, okay? Now, when it's actually fitted in position, okay, the style will actually go onto the wall just like so, okay? So when you take a measurement on them, all you need to do is hold it in position where it's actually going to go on the wall, okay? And then all you need to do is just take a mark here of your actual guide rail, okay? Just like so, okay? And then cut it to length. Now bear in mind guys, this doesn't have to be cut bang on to length, okay? You can leave it a little bit shy and it can be lifted up off the floor. The only critical thing you must make sure you do is that you must make sure you actually keep the actual style up tight to the actual guide rail. The little resultant gap on the floor won't matter because it's going to be covered later on, okay, with your actual skirting boards, okay? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go now, I'm going to cut that, and when we come back we'll be ready to actually install the actual stiles.